In the dawn age of Westeros, before the coming of man and the raising of castles and cities, there were only the children of the forest. Their wise men were called Green Seers and were possessed of a powerful magic. They worshipped nameless, faceless gods of the forest, stream and stone. According to legend, it was they who carved faces in the great white trunks of the majestic weirwoods. Their deep-cut eyes were red with sap and ever watchful. 12,000 years ago, the first men came from the eastern continent, crossing a land bridge called the Arm of Dawn. Riding their great horses and wielding weapons of bronze, they cut down the children's forests and weirwoods. A terrible war raged between the children and the first men that lasted for centuries. At long last, the two races sought an end to the years of horror and bloodshed. They met on a small isle in the centre of a great lake called the God's Eye. It was there they forged the pact. The first men would be granted dominion over the coastland, the mountains, the high plains and the bogs, but the deep forest would forever belong to the children, and no weirwood tree would ever again fall to man's axe. To seal the pact before the gods, the children carved a face in every weirwood tree on the island, which came to be known as the Isle of Faces. In time, the first men adopted the children's gods as their own. Most castles at that time contained a godswood with a weirwood or heart tree at its centre.
Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, a new religion was born in the hills of Andalos.
The Seven is a single deity with 7 aspects, each symbolising a different area of life, though most people refer to the 7 as separate gods.
The mother is prayed to for mercy and watches over fertility, childbirth and peace. The father sits in judgment over souls. The warrior is prayed to for protection, valor and skill in battle. The crone is the symbol of wisdom and foresight. The smith watches over creation and craftsmanship. The maiden symbolizes purity, love and beauty. Finally, there is the stranger, rarely prayed to, who represents death. According to legend, the God of 7 revealed itself to the Andals, and the invasion of Westeros followed soon after. The Andals sailed across the sea on ships armed with weapons of steel. Some warriors carved a 7-pointed star into their skin as a symbol of their new faith.
The invaders destroyed most of the weirwoods in the southern lands. They attacked with fire and weapons of steel, slaughtering the children of the forest wherever they could find them, burning out their weirwood groves, hacking away at the faces of the old gods, and spreading their own religion through the land. Centuries of war followed, and the Andals conquered every kingdom in Westeros, save one, the North. The kings of winter were able to withstand the Andal invasion, and descendants of the first men dwell there to this day, and continue to worship the old gods. As for the children of the forest, those who survived the slaughter were said to have fled far north and have not been seen again.
Legend tells of a winter that lasted a generation, and of a vast and terrible darkness that fell across the land. It came to be known as the Long Night. In the midst of this darkness, the White Walkers emerged from the far north. With their armies of the dead, they waged war against the living, laying waste to villages and holdfasts, leaving terror and destruction in their wake. After years of brutal conflict and unbearable loss, an alliance of the first men and the children of the forest managed to drive the walkers and their minions back into the frigid northern wastelands from whence they came. To prevent another invasion, the first men erected the Wall, a massive fortification 700 feet in height, stretching from the Frostfang Mountains in the west to the Bay of Seals in the east. It was a structure unlike any ever built. Indeed, some maintain it could only have been completed with the aid of giants, or using the powerful magic of the ancient children of the forest. Men were required to guard and maintain it, and thus the Night's Watch was born, a sworn brotherhood tasked with defending the realms of men against the dark forces that lay beyond. Upon taking his vows, a brother of the Night's Watch serves for life. It is a life of hardship and great sacrifice, so the oath must not be taken lightly. The punishment for desertion is death. Centuries come and gone, and although the White Walkers have yet to return, another threat has emerged. Barbarian tribes known as wildlings. The Rangers are charged with defending the realm against these lawless savages. For thousands of years, the brothers of the Night's Watch have stood their lonely vigil. As the seasons changed, as brutal wars raged in the south, as dynasties rose and fell, the Night's Watch endured. We are the swords in the darkness. We are the watchers on the wall. We are the shields that guard the realms of men.
These regions had been established by the first men in the Age of Heroes. One hero of this fabled age was Bran the Builder. Bran raised the wall and built the stronghold of Winterfell, establishing House Stark and reigning as the first king in the north. Other legends tell of the Grey King in the Iron Islands. Grey King took a mermaid to wife and defeated Naga, the first sea dragon. House Greyjoy of Pike, the current rulers of the region, claim to descend from him. House Casterly ruled the gold-rich Westerlands from their mighty seat of Casterly Rock, but their lands and power were swindled from them by the legendary trickster Lan the Clever. The noble house of Lannister is said to have descended from him. The verdant and fertile lands of the Reach were first ruled by House Gardener, whose founder, known as Garth Greenhand, wore a crown of flowers and vines. He ruled from Highgarden as the first king of the Reach and was said to have made the land bloom. Many noble houses trace their bloodlines back to him, including the current lords of Highgarden, House Tyrell. In the Stormlands, according to ballads of the age, a warrior named Durin fell in love with Elenai, whose father was god of the sea and mother was goddess of the wind. She gave her maidenhead to him, committing herself to a mortal life. Enraged, her parents called upon the winds and waters, destroying Darren's Bayside Keep and wiping out his wedding guests. Darren declared war on the gods and rebuilt his keep, which was also destroyed. 4 more castles he raised, each stronger than the last. All fell to the power of the gods. But Darren's 7th castle, Storm's End, withstood the gods' rage. Darren became known as Darren Godsgrief, and reigned as the first Storm King. There are countless other tales from the Age of Heroes, too many to count. These histories weren't recorded in a book, but passed down from generation to generation through story and song. And while some of them may be dismissed as fairy tales, every one of the 7 kingdoms is defined by them.